Good evening, everybody out there. Welcome to Rhythm Roast Cafe with Nick, Tom, and Danny. We're going to discuss one of the biggest shows of, what was it, 2021,
22,
right?
was it 21
It was right
or
after
22?
COVID.
Yeah.
Okay. It
21,
was, Travis Scott at Houston Astro
World.
Astro World, excuse me, I'm not from Texas. But I guess Astro World used to be like a amusement park, like Six Flags. And it went out of business as an amusement park. And coming from that area, he wanted to put on a show there that would reignite the pleasure of that park for the people from Houston.
Well, he had done
Travis
it before.
Scott.
He had
Yeah,
done. He
this
had
is
done
the
one.
third one.
Yeah, he had done one either. It was 19. And then
2019, 2020.
2020, and then
They skipped the COVID year.
I think they skipped 20.
20.
18,
okay.
19, and then they went to 21 where this tragedy happened.
Well, anyway, we're going to discuss that, and we're going to discuss a couple other current events as they come up. But we also want you to discuss this with us. So don't hesitate. Go find yourself some place that has, or some device that has a keypad on it. Watch us, watch Rhythm Roast Cafe on your device, and use your keypad to talk to us. We want you to be part of this experience. That's the whole reason we're here.
I also want to make sure that, and listen, most of the people that watch us are people that have worked for us, but maybe if down the road we give a few tips on how to not get yourself in a situation like some of these
Oh, yeah,
kids
that
got
was
in.
going to be part of it.
Okay.
That was my whole
Okay.
part of the thing. See,
Not a lot of prep show on this program here, folks. We don't do a lot of prep. We just come in and talk.
here's the basic overview. This is a festival, what they call festival seating. Okay, festival seating means you get a ticket that allows you to come in the gate, door, or whatever as a general admission to an event, which means you have no lease for a permanent position. You can't go to aisle 3, seat number 6, which is yours. That's what a reserved seat venue is all about. This is not a reserved seat venue when it's a general admission. It means first come, first serve as far as going wherever you want to go in the venue. If you want to be up to the stage, you can go to the stage. If you want to be roaming around, you can roam around. You're free. It's a true libertarian event. For all you libertarians out there, this has got to be your thing, okay? There's nobody telling you, you got to sit here, you got to go there. There's, the only thing they're telling you is where the bathrooms and the concession stands are. That's it.
And the merch. Don't forget the merch.
And the merch, yes. The merchandise, you got to hit the merchandise booth.
Well, but from a technical standpoint, you still have a ticket to be on the premises. And
Yes.
if you don't abide by the rules, then you can be removed from the premises.
Right, that
So
is
just
a
because you
condition of
doesn't have a
release.
seat doesn't mean that you can just do whatever you want, number one. And number two, it just appears that nowadays the general admission festival type events are the commonplace. Nobody has chairs anymore. Unless you're in a venue like a Rosemont or a Chicago Theater, things along those lines where that's the only thing you can do. But it seems that more and more events, especially the big events, are general admission.
Well, I stage events in a couple different stages. One is there's the reserved seat small venue, and then there's the general admission small venue. The general admission small venue is under 1,000 seats capacity, under 1,000 persons, maybe even 1,200. Someplace like Beginnings, okay, a nightclub, a bar that's huge, downtown bars.
Smacking it on your pocket. You're smacking
It's
it like
hidden on your pocket.
Oh.
Downtown, large downtown bars and stuff like that. That's one type of general admission. And then there's the small venue reserved seat, okay? And those are usually 1,000 to 2,000 seat venues, okay? The Riviera, places like that. Then the next up, you get into the 4,000 seaters, most of which are reserved seat. Chicago Theater, Oriental,
Auditorium, right.
Auditorium.
Very
When you
crowded.
get to some places though that are 4,000 to 5,000, like the Aragon, it's general admission. And the old, what was the one by the Stockyard?
Amphitheater?
The amphitheater. That was almost 10,000 general admission. I think I saw Led Zeppelin there, but it's, when you go to a general admission event, it's slightly more dangerous than going to a regular reserve seat. In fact, it's probably multiple times more dangerous, close to 50%.
Okay, so let's step back and analyze that from the beginning. General admission events, the danger starts in the line.
In the what?
In the line.
Yes.
Okay.
It could start in a parking lot.
Well, yeah, okay, but in terms of, general admission, if you don't have that line ready to go before the first kid gets there to line up, okay, you're in trouble.
And what did we see in Houston for this Travis Scott?
Well, they didn't have that. They lost the gates from the get-go. But let's take a step back.
What are you getting at? I don't know where you're going with this.
What I'm getting at is there are ways to control a crowd.
Did something bad happen at this
8
show?
kids died.
10.
Oh, well,
10
you
kids
just
died.
you should let me know that before you start talking.
What,
I didn't know you were
we
told
thought
last time everybody to watch. We told them to watch the event. You must not have heard
you
it.
got a red star by your name for not doing your homework.
Yeah,
Yeah, but the people watching, if I don't know what you're talking about, they don't know what you're talking
yeah,
about.
if they don't remember. All right, what happened in?
Well, but let's go back. Okay, general admission shows were outlawed for a good portion of time because of the Who concert in Cincinnati.
Right.
Where people thought the doors were opening, the band was doing their sound check, the crowd outside thought the band was coming on. They rushed to the doors. They didn't have any type of line system outside the doors. The doors opened out. So when people pushed in, they had nowhere to go. They had no way to open the doors to relieve the pressure, and a bunch of people died.
4, I think. 4
Yeah.
were crushed
But-
at the doors.
So that was kind of the impetus, like, okay, no more general admission shows, kind of.
What they did at the Who concert, there was a couple things. Number one, it was a circular
arena.
arena, and it was a circular walkway around the arena. So they let people start to line up within feet of the front door, 10, 15 feet, right up to the front door. And of course, when it starts to line up, there's 2, 3 people, and it's, 12 hours before the show, so no security is even assigned to it. Then an hour goes by, it's 40 people, and then those 40 people inch up a bit. Right.
And then you get the jerks that are just going to butt in the front of the line because there is no system.
Or they wait
to-
across the street while they're smoking dope or something, and
Whatever.
when they see people get up, because usually they're sitting down, they're not going to stand for 12 hours. They're sitting down. When they start to get up, for whatever reason, all those idiots from across the street will run over, join in the line, and of course, who's going to stop them, right? It's like, open field at that point. It's very libertarian. Okay,
We don't need to politicize it, but go
well,
ahead.
it is okay. That's what happens when you don't pay for somebody to control your environment. Anyway, they pushed to the front because they heard a sound check go on.
Right.
Okay, they all got to the front doors and they started pushing because people behind them were coming around the corner, didn't know that the doors were not open, so they just kept piling into this stayed line that couldn't go anywhere.
So, and we'll see this with the Travis Scott thing. You know, crowds are like kind of like waves.
Right.
Okay. The wave comes up on the beach, and what happens?
It's
flows
a ripple
back.
tank experiment.
Right. You have to have the room to flow back. If you don't have the room to flow back,
You have a problem.
right, because
You
then
have a
more
problem.
water is just going to come in, and it's just
Well, and here's
So to
another
speak.
thing. When you have, if this is the stage barricade or whatever, the immovable object, and these are two people, and they're getting pushed over here like it. When they get pushed, this guy, reactionary to breathe, sticks his butt out. When he sticks his butt out, it pushes this guy back. When it pushes that guy back, it pushes the guy behind him back. That's the reciprocal wave. That's the one that comes back in the ripple tank. When that comes back this way, then people push again this way. And then this guy comes back in here and he pushes
well,
him
yeah.
up.
I mean, you got to hit. The point is, Danny, as I tried to make, and I don't want to belabor it, but anytime you have a flow that comes forward, you have to have room for it to go backwards, or else you're in trouble.
Well, when you go backwards, what happened to these kids at AC/DC? I'm going to show
Well,
this.
yeah, that's a whole different.
Okay?
Yeah.
This was the stage, AC/DC. Okay, right here. What they had, oh, there we go. What they had was they wanted to fill this section in. They wanted to fill that section in with people, but they didn't want to overcrowd it. So the circles that you see here are sewers. Those 4-foot sewers that the storm sewers, concrete sewers.
sewer.
They brought them in and they put them on the side, and then they put a security guard in each side, in each one of these little circles. Did you ever go to Boston and see those cops in the corners, in the middle of the streets of Boston? No. The Boston people call them dummies in a box, okay? Because they're in a box in the middle of an intersection. Anyway, that's what these guys were, dummies in a sewer thing, right? And dummies in a,
They were useless.
German machine gunner on the Siegfried line.
Right. Absolutely useless. The purpose of these pods or cement, or whatever you want to call them, sewer things,
Cylinders.
was to constrict the flow or the rush coming from the main body down here going towards the stage. When the doors open up, all the promoters used to see is a rush of kids, and they thought that was the problem, so they were going to stop the rush of kids by putting these pods across here, and that was supposed to slow them down like a ripple tank experiment, right? Well, what it did was it slowed them down, but they still crushed to the front as they went through. Now what it did is it made a barrier so that wave that
Couldn't
comes
move
back
back.
couldn't move back, okay? Now what happens when people move back is that the ones that are taller and the people who are stronger, okay? If this guy here is the taller, heavier guy, and this guy here is the smaller, lighter weight guy, when he goes backwards, he's pushing this guy. This guy slides up, loses his feet from the ground because there's somebody bigger than him behind him. This guy's squeezing him like you squeeze a popsicle, and the smaller guy is going up. While he's going up, his legs go out like this. Right. Okay?
He
now he's
italicizes.
dead because there's no coming back from this. You fall down.
Well,
and you're on the ground now with your legs out in front of you, this guy in front of you standing on your legs, tripping over you, falling on top of you, bending you backwards.
Right, and then that's
You're
exactly
back on your back, flat out, and there are people flopping on top of you.
Well, and that's exactly what one of the kids at the Travis show said. It happened to him. He ended up going down
And
because
that's exactly what killed those two kids at ACDC.
right.
Okay, they couldn't go back. They were stopped from going back. The wave stopped. The kid slid down. He was trampled on by the people in front of him. There was an 11-year-old girl, and I think it was a 9-year-old boy or
9-year-old
something
boy,
like
yeah.
that.
Something along
Both
those
of them died, and they were within 10 feet of the band, and there were kids yelling at the band at the stage right side to stop, and the band AC/DC played on. Okay, they would not stop.
Now, I never heard as to whether or not somebody got word to them to stop, and they didn't.
Well, they were yelling at them.
Well, I understand,
Yeah.
but you know, we've worked these things. We have communication. We have guys with radios and headsets at the stage, and we get it to our supervisors, and our supervisors go to the stage managers, and you get and you know, you kind of get that information going pretty fast.
Right.
Okay. The Travis Scott show, it appears that there was only 2 people that could communicate with the band to let them know either, listen, we got to stop the show, or there's an
There
issue or
was the
something.
audio director.
The one guy they couldn't know was one of the Live Nation representatives.
Oh, yeah.
They couldn't find him.
Right.
Okay, you know, who knows where he was? Couldn't find him. But that's what happens when you have, to me, when you have people that are in charge of that aren't in charge of the crowd. To me,
goes deeper than that.
anybody that's in charge of the security and the safety of the people in that venue, no matter who it is, they have to have some type of direct line and a direct authority to shut that thing down.
And I think I could go even deeper than that. They shouldn't have a fiduciary relationship with the promoter.
Outside of getting paid.
Well, I mean, they shouldn't be responsible to the promoter, the people that are in charge of security.
Well, then
Well,
that takes
maybe
away
they should.
that takes away your in-house security companies.
You can do that, but you see, the problem with a festival is it's a big area that is rarely secured. Okay, it's rarely used or set up for a concert, so it's not like you go to the Aragon and you have in the back of your mind, I need 54 guys, I need 4 guys for this door and 6 guys for that.
Well, you have natural barriers. You have walls. You
You've
have
done
doors.
this, okay?
You have
These guys have
staircases.
only done this twice before, and it wasn't done very well. Okay, the 2 times that they did it before, they didn't seem to take notice. If you're going to secure, the first line of defense that you have to secure is the perimeter. Okay, and all Republicans know this because they're screaming about our borders. It's the same principle.
I
okay?
argued that to you when we were talking about borders, and
Yes,
you went,
sir.
"Oh, there's no difference. It's a
Well,
ticket."
yeah, but this is a rock concert.
Yeah,
Okay, those
again,
people are fleeing something. These people
you-
are fleeing to something.
You just came to my side without knowing it, but go ahead. On the border, but go ahead.
That's what makes this great.
I know.
Okay, I mean, it's what separates us from the view.
Yeah. And we don't
Anyway.
anyway here either.
Anyway, yeah, when we had outdoor venues, festival seating, we always did our search in front of the turnstile. And there was a reason for that. Okay? You have your personnel on the outside of the perimeter instead of behind the perimeter.
But it even starts further than that. Okay? From what I saw from some of the videos of the Travis show, they had some really bad fencing that all you had to do was blow on it and it went down.
Well, it was construction fencing.
Yeah,
you know.
and they didn't have it. They didn't have it secured. They didn't have it patrolled. They didn't have. It seemed like they didn't have any.
Nick,
Hang on,
should've-
Dan. It seems like they didn't have any kind of system for the very front of the line at the very beginning. And once you lose the front of the line, you're never going to get back, like we said earlier, and it was an absolute disaster. And that's when even the horses couldn't stop these people because there were just too many of them coming from too many different directions.
Did you see those horses?
They were
They're
useless.
useless.
Right.
Okay, they had them lined up. They might as well have been Mr. Ed and his friends. Okay, they're doing
And
nothing.
usually horses are really good deterrents, but not in this
but
one.
not the way they were using
Not
them.
the way they used them.
Okay, and I'm surprised they're from Texas. They shouldn't-
Horses work best when there's a man with a saber.
or a lance. You know, but
You
no,
saw
it-
Dr. Zhivago, right? You know, when those horses went after that crowd, they were just.
But you know, it's what we would do. What I would have done is I would have put all the search people in front of the entrances, each gate. Okay. Now they said they had 30,000 people. Well, it takes 2 hours to get 30,000 people in using 6 gates. That's all I would have used. It's just 6 gates, not as many. They didn't even say how many they used. Okay. I would have just used 6 gates. I would have put 5 searchers in front of each gate. That's 30 men. I would have put another 5 to 6 behind the turnstiles, okay, for support, taking tickets, making sure they're checking their whatever. All right. And you would have been able to control the ingress. And they were not able to control their ingress. They said 30,000. They had no idea because they lost the gates.
They lost the gate, and they were probably more there. It ended up being a mini Woodstock. It was
Yeah,
because
it was,
you know
I
you
don't
might
know
have
if
had
it was
to-
Woodstock.
No, but
maybe
my
50,000.
My point being is you had a number of tickets that were sold, except when you lost the gates, you have no idea how
No
many
idea
people.
how much
Hey,
you
get
got.
your butt down here. It's
Right,
wide open.
right.
Okay, so they could have had another 5, 7, 10,000 people that didn't belong there.
Here's something else. Anybody that's associated with the promoter is going to have a hard time shutting the show down, okay, for safety reasons. And that's what they were calling for once the 8 kids got killed, okay, Stanton.
Well, they didn't know, but
You know,
yeah.
well, they knew about the first 2. Okay, when the kids were climbing up the stage and trying to tell the stagehands stop the show, you know, they knew that there were
Well,
people there.
that was the camera guy that was out
Right.
in the middle of the room.
Well,
That's who that was. And he was trying to tell them, get off the platform. And they're like, there's people dying out here.
right. But you see, they had no fire marshal, is what I'm getting at. What we would have is we would have a fire marshal, and the fire marshal would take control over police, over security, over everything. They had no one in control. The promoter is not going to ever be the guy in control because all he sees is his money going down the drain. Okay? They have to be a very, very lost conscious promoter.
Every venue needs a bad guy.
Yeah.
Everybody, and it
Absolutely.
usually is the police or the fire marshal that comes in and says, "You're not doing this anymore. We're done."
Well, I know it's called regulation, and that's an anathema for a lot
Not
of
when it
people.
comes to
but
safety. Not when it comes to safety. I think
This-
most people generally agree.
Where
that-
was the fire marshal?
Never heard about a fire marshal at Travis.
Where was the fire marshal's deputies?
Right.
There should have been 5 to 6. There should have been a deputy on a radio in each of those little box corrals that they had that were death traps. Okay, there was 4 of them as far as I saw.
Well,
Did you
the
notice that
ones-
they used my T barricade?
Well,
In the front?
somewhat.
Oh,
yeah,
inverted
somewhat.
T,
yeah,
but yeah.
yeah. I mean, it seemed like the kids, if you're at crowd right, didn't have as much of a problem as the kids on crowd left, and that's because the earlier show was
on that
off to
side.
the far stage
Right.
stage left. So when all those kids came, there was no uniform way to split those kids
Right.
up
So
to
they tunneled
divert
them right
so
into
you,
the
so
one
you
side.
had half of them going stage right, you had half of them
Right.
going stage left. They all piled in, and like we said, once they piled in, the crowd went up. It had nowhere to go back.
Did you
and they were-
notice there
and they
was
were-
no signage? There was no
I didn't see
right,
enough.
stage
Yeah,
left. There was nothing.
Yeah.
No directions. Nobody giving you any information to these kids. The other thing is, it was an event that encompassed a large area of non-event stuff.
well, that's what festivals always do.
Roller coasters, merry-go-rounds, okay, rides, and stuff. They should have never included that as part of the inclusion perimeter. That should have been separate. you should have had your actual perimeter at the stages. Okay, the entrance to that staging area. And then you could have controlled your crowd. You can't control your crowd if you got an entire 2/3 of it outside your seating area.
The other thing that you kind of shakes your head is we were always big. We trained. I mean, back in the day, you brought your buddy, you gave him a shirt, you put
Right.
him in a spot that
Right.
wasn't too.
You heard that in that, yeah.
It wasn't too
Guy
serious
called
of a
me up. I
spot.
brought my uncle with me.
Yeah, the night before.
Yeah.
The day before, they got like, oh yeah, I got hired, and they gave me they told me wear black, and they gave you a vest, and then, I mean, these guys had no idea, a plan, training, anything.
Do
They
you
had
remember
nothing.
when Pearl Jam took us out to California?
Yeah.
Golden Gate Park. Okay, we were going to see their great, Bill Graham's great. What was the name of that company that he used? I forgot.
Bill Graham Productions, I thought it was.
Was it Bill Graham? I think they had a Command Security or something. I don't know. Some
No,
other
that was
security.
Damien Zumwalt.
Oh, that's right. Anyway, when we went
Damien
there,
Zumwalt.
they were hiring people off the street, and they were getting their names, signing their some list, and they were giving them a T-shirt as a security, and that was it. Okay, I couldn't believe it. This is Bill Graham. This is the rock and roll mecca. You know, we're in San Francisco. We're in Golden Gate Park.
He's the Fillmore guy, right?
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, Fillmore West, right? You know, and Fillmore East. He had the two Aragons on the coast. You know, we had the one in the middle, but he had the ones in the coasts, right? And he was signing people up day of the show. I looked at Nick and I shook my head and I said, I've just lost all confidence in this guy. You know, all my respect went away. You know, he didn't have a professional company. You know, he had a laissez-faire kind of an idea. Anyway, back to this thing. You put your people outside the gates, and then what you do to slow the crowd down, like we did at the World Music Theater, you tell them, women to the right, men to the left, okay? And then you have your searchers search them outside the gate. Well, once you've given them direction, they're not thinking, we can storm the gate, unless they're the Grateful Dead.
Unless it-
okay, which is
And
a whole
I
different
have
thing.
to say, this crowd seemed like it was a different type of crowd. It seems like Travis attracts a crowd that, pardon my language, doesn't really give a fuck if you're going to tell
Well,
them where to
he
go or
said
not.
something about it too.
Right, and that doesn't help the situation either.
No, he didn't
Okay.
help at all.
Well, I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about the mentality of the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
It was, everybody was COVIDed out. People wanted to, people were talking about this is when it would be this great release of energy.
Yeah, because
Okay.
they missed the one
And they
year
weren't
before.
going to, they didn't give a crap about who was going to tell them to do what.
Is this performer a country guy
No, he's
No,
a rap guy.
or a rap guy?
Yeah, he's a rap guy, but he's a crossover rap guy. Okay, he gets a lot of white. He gets a lot of Hispanic.
He's dating a Kardashian, if it matters.
Yeah.
Married to him, I don't know. what it
There's
is,
a
but yeah.
crossover
But
right there.
so I think you had one thing you had is you had a crowd that probably wasn't really open to listening to direction from the beginning, and that's why you say at the very beginning you have to let the crowd know who's in control.
Well, the other thing is,
Okay,
it
you
was,
have to.
It was an urban crowd. Okay, and the urban crowds aren't very used to festival seating.
I don't know about that, Dan.
I
don't know
don't
about
think
that.
they go to many
I
outdoor
don't know.
events.
I don't
Okay,
know.
because
I
most
don't know.
outdoor events.
I think most things in the last 7 to 10 years have been festival seatings.
Do you remember when we had festival seating for Rick James over at Soldier Field?
I don't, but please don't make it a long story.
Let me tell you what happened to that one. Okay, well, it was only half sold. 30,000 people in a 60,000 seat venue, right? Rick James comes out in his see-through pants, and all of a sudden, I was up in the colonnades because I wanted to see what was going on in this thing because movement was happening. There was a lot gangs of kids. When I say gangs, I mean 12, 15 in a group moving together through this loosely, because it was only half a house, loosely configured crowd. Well, all of a sudden you hear this bang, 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 bang. He's got a gun. He's got a gun. These kids were throwing off, lighting firecrackers and throwing them off and yelling, "He's got a gang. He's got a gun." Well, all these nice people that came to see Rick James had their blanket out on the street, on the grassy area of the main floor, right? They had picnic stuff out. They had their purses on the blankets. They had their picnic bags.
I get it.
Well, they get scared and they start running. They don't. Half of them don't grab their purses. Half of them don't grab their stuff. These kids are running after them, picking up stuff. You know, and I'm watching it all from the colonnades. I get on the radio and I tell Andre to get some people down there. You know, and that this is a ruse. You know, but that's what happens at some of these events that these people are not familiar with. Okay, I mean they don't know what's normal, what should happen. There was
I didn't see that from the interviews that they had on the Travis show. I didn't see that these kids were naive to being in those types of shows and those types of environments. Okay, now
Rudy had never been to one. He died.
why? And it was a 10-year-old kid that died. Why would you take a 10-year-old kid into a mosh pit like that? Is bizarre.
Well, that's another thing.
That's bizarre. Okay, that's somebody should feel real bad for that one. Bringing your brother, your cousin, your kid, okay, and putting them in that kind of situation. And you know, folks, listen, if you're not physically and mentally prepared to be in the front of a show like that, don't do it. Okay, it sounds cool and it sounds like it's fun, and you can go tell your friends that, oh, we were up close and it was raging and whatnot. And in that quick of an eye, you could be in big trouble.
Crowds are dangerous, really dangerous. Okay, even in reserved seating areas. I was at I was in the upper deck during the egress at the guy from, not Mountain, the other guy from Woodstock. Anyway, he at the end of his set, the crowd started leaving from the upstairs. So I went down halfway through the crowd egress. Going down those steps from the balcony at the old Coliseum, I was lifted off the ground. I did not touch earth until I got down to the end of the staircase. And I'm 200 pounds. You know, I just got lifted out. I had to go with the flow. I had no choice. I couldn't turn around. I couldn't go left. I couldn't go right. We were all going down the stairs together, you know, and we were packed in. It's an amazing thing when you see the power of a crowd. Now, psychologists will tell you that people have an interpersonal body buffer zone, okay? And it's between 18 to 20 inches, or in some cases, the length of an arm, okay, if you want to look at it that way. And that's where if you put people in a room and they don't know each other, they'll stay that far apart from each other, okay? And it's just natural, okay? When you start squeezing people closer than that, then you start to get involuntary movement. People move to the left, they go right, they go forward.
They try to
go
make
backward.
space for themselves.
They just subconsciously have to make more room for themselves, and that's where that wave starts.
Which was the weird thing about the whole mache phenomena. You know.
Well, okay. Like, okay, I remember when I the first time the Ramones played the Air Gun, and I was sitting front row in the chair. You had the chairs. There was no mosh pits. You just had chairs all the way up to the stage, right? Was that a better situation than when they went with the mosh pits and everything?
Yeah, it's a safer situation, you know, until it got more radical than the Ramones.
Right.
When it got more radical than the Ramones, they said no chairs. The kids said no chairs, and they tore the chairs off the.
That whole early punk mache thing is they would just stand in one spot and they would jump up and down.
Pogo dance.
They would pogo dance. Okay,
Right.
That's how it originally started, and that in and of itself was
innocuous.
yeah. I mean, it was like they just all like to just jump up and down, straight up and down like a pogo stick, and then it started getting a little more aggressive, and I need to move my space out, and you push me, and I push you, and it got more and more violent to the point where now we got into the thrasher shows,
Right.
and they would run in circles like the Indians around the wagons, and you'd always have some big guy in the middle that was, you know, throwing elbows at people's heads, and we'd have to go into the guy and say, "Look, get your elbows down, okay? You know, you want to slam dance and you want to do that, fine, but no cheap shots." And it just got more and more. Violence got more and more acceptable in the pit.
What was strange to me was the way that early punk and Ramones kind of punk eventually went into thrasher metal and merged. Okay, you saw it happen within 2 or 3 years.
Right.
Okay, from 78 to 81, something like that. And it just when it finally evolved into thrasher metal, mosh pit, whatever you want to call it, it was extremely violent. And what they would do with the mosh pit is they would start on stage left, you know, and go in a circle for a while until they got enough energy together. And then somehow, just like those swarms of fish in the ocean, they'd go stage right, okay? They'd go travel 80 feet from stage left to stage right, knocking everything out of their way, you know, as they went through. And there's no whales to gather them up, right? So after 3 or 4 severe injuries, and amongst all of this, people are trying to get on stage and then diving back into the crowd, okay?
Right.
And stave diving is okay if you're smart enough to see that the crowd is there to dive into, okay? But just to get on the stage, then turn your back to the audience and show how brave you are, and then do a back dive into the audience, the people weren't there sometimes, right? And you'd go do a header, boom, you know?
Right. Or you got some guy that was 220, and it's like, I'm not catching this guy.
Yeah, I'm not catching him.
It's part like the Red Sea. But
And then there was we had that woman over at one of the Woodstock 94, or whatever it was. She stage dived off of the stage into the crowd, back on her back. Well, she was floated by the crowd about 20 feet. But you got to remember, this was a 3rd day out there, so there were no women left in the crowd. It was just boys, okay, that stood out. She didn't get more than another 20 feet, and she didn't have a stitch of clothes left on her, okay?
Yeah.
And there was a finger in every orifice that was presented as she went by. I looked at my friend and I said, I guess that's modern safe sex or something, you know?
I want to get away from the war stories and really talk about procedure and really kind of why this thing turned into such a travesty, and more so, how do you prevent something like this in the future? We always talk about security is the big ticket item that you get no return on unless you save yourself. We save yourself a lawsuit, you don't know how much money you saved. The insurance companies and whatever. You know, you're going to a festival a festival event. What do you do to stay safe? You know, what do? You make sure that you're hydrated. You make sure that you got an out. Okay,
Make
you always
sure
got to
you have
make sure you
true
got an
friends with you.
Well, even the guys that had friends, they still got. You can get separated real fast if you're in the wrong spot.
Going late and staying in the
Okay.
back.
Got to realize one thing. These kids think the cell phone is going to save them. Your cell phone is useless when you're underneath 40 people in the middle of mud, you know, in the middle of a rock concert, a festival seating rock concert.
I don't know. I think people are just naive to the fact that things can happen so bad.
If
so
you
fast.
slide, if you start to feel yourself being lifted off the ground, okay, turn your back away, turn your body away from the area that you're being drifted towards, so that you have power in your legs. Because if you're gonna go, if that wave is pushing you backwards, and your legs are underneath you, those legs are gonna end up in front of you, and you're gonna slide down, and you're gonna be hopeless. If you get to the ground like that, the only thing that's gonna save you is a wrestling move. Move to your side. Keep your side to the ground.
Well,
okay, so that this way you can breathe.
Right.
If you can have 6
Turtle.
people on top of you,
Turtle
but if
yourself
you pull your knees up, you do what a wrestler does. You pull your knees up, you crouch over in a fetal position, you get your shoulders to give your chest some air breathing space. That's what you do. You'll survive. There was the kid in that, I forgot what the name of the nightclub was. It was a 1,000-seat nightclub I think it was in Rhode Island. They had a fire, and they had pyrotechnics. And the pyro behind the stage started baffling, and the smoke built up, and everybody died except this kid. He was a wrestler. What did he do? He got on his side. There were 60 people on top of him that they pulled off. 60 people. They were 12 feet from the door. Okay, as the doors were open, air came in, cool air, but cool air comes in and it goes to the floor. Hot air
Rises.
goes to the top, and the hot air was so intense and so thick that it pushed and compacted the cool air into a small little cavern that's only 6 inches. He was 6 inches from the ground. He got air.
I think
nobody
if
else
you're
did.
you're getting you're in a show and the show is getting towards the point where the main act is coming on or whatnot, I think you have to look around, and if you can't, with some degree of reason, be able to get yourself out of there, okay, it's time to get out of there.
It is.
Okay, if you find yourself to the point where you now don't have any control of your movement within a vicinity that you're in, you're probably in trouble. So you need to discern when does that point happen.
I'll go with the crowd psychologist. If your interpersonal body buffer
Well, that's not
zone
gonna
is
happen,
gone,
Danny.
get the hell out.
Well,
to
I mean
where it
that's
is.
great for you old guys like you and me, but young kids, this is what they know about going to shows. It's festival. You get crowded up. Everybody's up in front. Everybody's on top of each other. Oh, if you get a little too hot, security's going to pull you over the barricade, and you're going to be fine.
Speaking of that, what
but
were the hoses?
but the point of the matter is that it at some point when you're at a venue, and I don't care, festival, Aragon, whatever the case may be, if you are getting into the point where you are now seeing that you can't readily get yourself, turn your shoulders and say, I'm getting to go, whether it's the bathroom or a concession or whatever, okay, you need to discern when that moment is, and you need to get out of there because now you're not in control.
Right.
Everybody else is in control but you. And,
Right.
some people are okay with that. I'm not. I would never be like that.
Right, no, it's
Where were the fire hoses?
where were the fire hoses? I mean, that's
Would
the
they
other
need
thing.
them? Why do they need them?
Well, that would have done a lot of good.
Might have made everything way slippery and harder for people to grab and pull and whatnot. I don't know if that necessarily that. It wasn't a heat exhaustion thing. Travis, it wasn't a heat exhaustion issue. It was
Some of it was.
It was suffocation because they were compacted. It wasn't.
I don't see how. What were those fences supposed to do?
Wood fences.
The fences that they put those little corrals together, the stage left and stage right fences.
It looked like they just wanted to separate the crowd.
Was that supposed to prevent them from
Evidently.
marching to the stage?
I guess they never really explained, and it's probably because whoever designed that system didn't get interviewed. I mean, they had the expert, who I thought was pretty insightful. He
wasn't bad.
No, he was pretty good. He knew his stuff. He had access to it, but we didn't hear from the people that set this thing up going like, why did you set this up this way? What was your thought behind doing this?
And they didn't say anything about why he had an inverted double T. It wasn't just a single T. It was a T and then another T. It looked like an upside down Greek cross is what it looked like.
Well, I mean, there was a cross. Yeah. But again, I don't know what their logic was. We ran into that, like you said, when we went to San Francisco.
San Francisco.
They had this inverted T barricade, and I'm not going to try to explain it all. But the fact of the matter is it wasn't working, and it wasn't working. Sorry to say, but it wasn't working until 5 of us went out there and took control of it,
Right.
and then it started working. Okay,
I told you what it was. It was Vercingetorix.
Oh
Okay,
yeah, from both sides.
Yeah, you had double barricades and
And they got a different way of doing things out there. I remember when we were out there, and me, all 145 of me at the time. I'm pulling people and grabbing people, and
they were
the guy
used to doing that.
And then the guy goes like, "What are you doing?" And I go, "Move." He goes, "Well, what are you gonna do?" I said, "What am I gonna do?" I go, "I'm gonna have you arrested." He goes, "For what?" I go, "I'll think of something." He goes, "You could do that?" I go, "Yeah, I can." And the guy went like, "Oh, okay." And I don't think they ever heard that before. I mean, they were so used to not being directed or somebody being in control over there.
See, what happens is you would pull them out of the crowd, and now they would be in the barricade.
They would be in the better part of the pit.
Yeah,
they'd be in the better part of the pit.
And then they'd linger there. Okay, yeah, this is a nice place to be, right? Instead of them going stage right or stage left and getting back into the crowd in a safer place, right? So we'd have to coax them along. But
It was tragic. It was sad. I watched it with my son, and it took
so
me
let's
about.
talk a little current events.
Okay, what do you want to talk about?
Okay, let's talk about with the guy you were talking, the communist or the socialist, or
Oh, in New York.
The mayoral candidate of New York.
the mayoral candidate of New York, right?
How do the Democrats feel about this gentleman? I'm just curious because I'm hearing the Democrats are a little nervous.
Well, conventional corporate-funded Democrats, like Bill Clinton, may he burn in hell someday.
I thought he was your guy. I thought he was your guy.
I've never been a Clinton guy.
I thought it was the
put NAFTA
Democrats
I was a
guys.
Clinton guy.
I thought it was the Democrats guy.
He's the kind of he's one of the people that ruined the Democratic Party.
Thinking about tomorrow.
There was no Trump without Clinton,
Maybe not.
but this guy
Well, they were both friends of Epstein.
he describes himself as a democratic socialist, like a European moderate politician would be. He believes in a lot of socialist stuff, but he believes in arriving at it through a democratic method. You can vote the socialism out, but the next people, they can come in, vote it in, vote it out.
I hear his family's pretty affluent.
Well, he might be.
Well, his
But,
father's a
uh,
professor at Columbia.
Some
I'm
people
sure his
don't like
father's
him
getting
because
paid.
he's a Muslim is troubling to some people. But he's as Democrats go, he's like Bernie. He has a lot of socialist ideas. There's no doubt about that. He wants to make the bus system free, which is stupid.
There was
What people need,
government control the grocery stores.
what people need is to make good money and then use and then
way they
pay
want
and then
to.
pay for the bus.
Right.
That's what people need. I don't see this when they say we're going to make this free, they're going to take my tax money and they're going to make it free. But if they say we're going to get people better wages and then they're just going to pay for the bus, they're not taking the money from me, they're taking it from employers.
Yeah, but the employers aren't going to just sit and lay back. They're going to pass it on to you again
Well,
by
they
raising
are.
the price of the product.
But I'd rather it goes that way. I'd rather it goes that way than me paying it through taxes.
I just see that it being circular. It just continues to spiraling.
Well, you
But
don't
it
think
gets
people
big.
should make more money? Would you given a choice? Should people make more money or should they get more stuff
Sure,
for
they
free?
should make more money, but then everything else should stop. If that's the paradigm, okay? Make more money, stop everything else the way it is. But if it's relative, make more
what?
money, cost more, spend more, make more to cost more, to spend more. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but you're always better off to have more money.
What you're
You
saying is
never
have the
saw a
choice.
conservative turn down more money. All
I've
right.
never seen
Well,
a liberal
the-
turn down more money. You
You're
haven't seen
right.
anybody turn down
Who
more
turns
money.
down more money?
Who turns down more
come on.
money?
Whether it's free money or whether it's paid for your services. money.
I
The
don't
difference is
believe
it's-
in making that stuff free.
Again, it's other people's money when it becomes into the taxes.
Well-
if I choose not to buy a product, I choose not to buy a product because I don't think they're giving me value for my dollar.
My old Econ 201 professor told me once, or told the class once, and it stuck with me, that if you ever want to define America's economy, you have to define it as a free market, number one, free market, capitalist, number two, economy, with elements of socialist institutions. And then he said, now you have, once you mention the word socialist institutions, he said, you can't stop there because people will immediately say communism, okay? Which it isn't. A socialist institution is an institution in which the society decides is a necessary institution that everybody needs to pay for, okay? Military, police, fire, libraries, all of those are socialist institutions.
Who
You didn't-
decides what
You didn't
what
decide that you wanted a police department directly. You didn't contract with them directly. You voted for somebody to contract with them in your stead.
any form of government has to provide for the basic needs of its people.
Well,
Okay, police, fire, defense.
Yeah,
Okay,
but if-
sewage, water,
You could do
roads.
it
Okay,
strictly
we don't.
capitalist
I don't
if you
think.
want.
I don't think. Well,
You could. You could
you-
say.
but I,
You could say I sign up for the fire protection. I'm gonna just like you would for an IT protection guy. Give him
No, I don't think you can do that, Danny, because if I want to pay for the firemen, that's on me. But if you don't have to. But guess what? If your house burns down, it might burn down my house too. So if you don't want to pay for it, you affect me as well too.
But that's
so
what
there's
lawyers are for.
There's, no, that's
So
not
you
what
can
lawyers.
sue
No,
me
Danny,
for
because
not paying
because
it.
well, in the meantime,
So what about
the
the
house
guy in
is
New
burned
York?
down and I'm dead. Okay,
what
yeah,
about-
that makes no sense.
He's
This
a
is the
socialist.
fifth time we've had the same. You know Marcus Licinius Crassus?
Yes.
Whom Laurence Olivier played in Spartacus?
Spartacus.
He was the richest Roman. You know how he gained a lot of his wealth?
How?
He had a fire department. He had a Rome. People in Rome lived in like 5-6
Was
story.
that
they lived in
after Nero
apartment
burned
buildings.
everything down or before?
No, this is before.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, that
but
didn't
there
work.
was no Rome didn't have a fire department. So Crassus had a fire department, and people lived in 5-6 story apartments. So a building catches fire. Crassus shows up with his fire department. The guy's outside of my building. He says, "Well, here's how much I want to put out the fire." And if the guy says, "Oh, I can't afford that," Crassus would say, "I'll give you this much for the building right now, and I'll put out the fire." And it'll be
Sounds
my
like a
building."
mob.
Huh?
Sound like a mob thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
probably
Sounds
set the
like-
fire himself. But my answer is about the guy that owns the building. I'm talking about the guy next door, the guy that lives next door, whose building may be next.
Oh, Crassus would make a deal with him too.
I mean, so that's the guy you got to worry about. You don't want to, if you don't want to insure your house from fire, great. But if it burns down,
I'm with you 100%. I'm just
you're
saying
going to
that
pay
that-
for mine too.
That is a socialist institution.
It is to the extent, Danny, that the government has to provide for the greater welfare of its general public. It has to protect it. It
Okay.
has to provide
Yes,
for it.
absolutely.
So if you're going to say that portion of our Constitution, of our preamble, is a socialist dogma,
No,
okay,
institution.
okay, then it is. No, what do you mean institution?
Public school, socialist institution.
Okay.
I mean,
Because at
anything-
some point people said we need to educate our kids.
and that's what made us great.
Okay.
The reason we got so much ahead of the rest of the world were they were sending their kids to our schools.
Mm-hmm.
Our schools were great. All our kids were getting educated. They weren't being homeschooled. They were being educated in schools.
No, not so much, but go ahead.
Well, because we made an effort
Well,
towards it.
all my kids went to public schools, and
Oh, yeah, I went to
they
public
got
school.
educated fine.
I went to public school.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
the-
they're doing all right.
no, but getting back to just because things are for the benefit of the society doesn't necessarily make it a socialized form of government. In my eyes.
Well,
now you might
actually,
have
there's no
you
such
might
thing
have
as a socialized form of government.
well, socialism.
Socialism is an economic thing.
Yeah.
And you
it's
can
just the
have
way you
it,
pay
it,
for
it can
things.
exist under various forms of government. You can have socialism with a dictator. You can have socialism with a democracy. It's an economic thing.
We're
Well,
gonna
no,
pull,
but there's also a
socialism is we're
socialist
gonna
form
pull
of government that's
we're gonna
not
pull our money.
strictly economic.
Well,
Yes, it
what's
is.
the
And
social-
until you put a boss on it that says you have to do this, then when you direct the economy, now you're talking communism or totalitarianism. Socialism doesn't direct an economy; it pools interest. It pulls your economic value of the citizens together to perform a function. Okay, but you may not like the function it performs. You may not like the education as a function. You might be critical of it. You might think that people should be home educated. So you're forced into being socialistic, okay? Because you live in a society that says your taxes are going to fund that school, whether you want to or not.
Right.
Okay.
No,
And that's
and there's
socialism.
a certain amount of acceptance in that to the majority of taxpayers. I know that I have to pay for services that I can't provide for myself.
Or that's
Fire, police,
Right, or
school,
inconvenient
sewer.
to do
You know,
it by
unless
the
I
way.
have a septic tank and a well, I
Right.
those other things are. I might be able to do. But for the most part, people don't have a problem with that. I don't think. I think most liberals and most conservatives don't have a problem with that.
Because they've been used to it.
Well, yeah, but I think it's necessary in the world that we live in now that you need to do that. Okay, some people take protection into their own hands. That's why they have handguns. Okay, we've talked about that before. All right, but in terms of the waste and taking now tax money and using it for things that really don't benefit me as a general member of the society is usually where people have a problem. Okay? For instance, he wants to allow bus rides for free, the new guy. Okay? Well, I don't take the bus. It has no bearing on my life. I don't want to pay for that.
Did
Okay.
he say why?
I don't. I
mean,
whatever.
has he given any
I
justification?
really
for it?
haven't paid too much attention to the guy. I told Tom, I mentioned it earlier. He wants to have governments run grocery stores. Okay, so what on Wednesday it's bread and milk day. Is that how it's going to work? Today you can come here and get your bread and milk, and here's what it's going to cost you, and here's how much you can get. Okay, is that what we're going to do? I don't know. I don't know what.
I don't
plan
know
is.
the details. I
Right,
read
right,
the New York Times, but
right.
I've been since his primary that he won. I've been very busy with other things.
But I think the bigger thing is this Democratic Party leadership seems to be trending in a much more progressive, far left, socialist, more of a socialist type of government. He said, I think this guy's Bernie Sanders on steroids. I think he's 2 steps ahead of Bernie Sanders.
Well, that's okay, because right now the Republicans are real far to the right, so the
I don't necessarily
Democrats.
think so.
Oh, I think they are.
Okay, I don't. But, okay.
But they are definitely on the right.
We're definitely on the right, but I don't know. I don't think they're as extreme as the left is to the left.
Well, I think your average. All right, I am really more to the left than these social leftists, because I don't want in corporate bathrooms like the social liberals. All right, they want to get we want it. I want in their wallets, and that makes me much more radical than any of these people
You want the money? Show me the money.
I want the money,
Okay.
and I
So
think
you're
when
a
people
Republican
have
at heart.
when people have money, then they take care of their social problems. And if they have enough money that they could take care of their social problems, but choose not to, then they can go to the devil.
Well,
You
that's
know?
what happens, though, Tom. I mean, that's what happens. I mean, people, and that'll bring me right back to this concert we were talking about. Those people were out for themselves. They weren't worried about everybody else, the kids that were there. They wanted to get closer. They wanted to get more involved in the event. They wanted the stuff. It was all me. And that's what happens with people. Okay, if there's no
Outside of the nurse that saved the kid.
well,
No?
there's Mother Teresa and there's the altruistic people that
I
float
think-
down from heaven. There's 1 out of every 750 of them. Okay, they can stand in line with the 1 out of every 750 people who have an IQ.
You
over
have a much more
140.
cynical view of humanity than I
people
do.
they don't realize that they're creating a dangerous situation.
Exactly. They don't realize they're in it, and they don't realize they're creating it by doing what
And
they're
then it
doing.
happens, and when it
But
happens,
that's the same.
bang, it
you
happens.
can use the same analogy in money. Okay, people who are wealthy don't realize that creating more wealth for themselves is detrimental to a group of people that are poor.
I don't necessarily agree with that correlation at all. I think
Well, yeah,
physical,
keep your
physical,
if you own the McDonald's and they
physical.
keep the-
You're not going to compare wealth with physical harm. You're not.
It's not
You're not.
physical harm. It's,
We
well,
just
it's
we just
long-term.
talked about it.
All right.
People with wealth and people that are involved in politics, they're thinking about what they're doing. That isn't a thoughtless thing. And some people are up to good things, and some people are up to bad things. And but a mindless thing, like a crowd, there's nobody giving any thought to that. You
Right.
know? It
Right.
it's just something that.
The only guys that think about it are guys like him and I that were doing it.
Well,
Yeah.
we can see the crowd
We've seen
reaction.
it. We've seen it.
We've seen it happen. We've seen them. You say it's mindless, yes, but it's not directionalist. Okay, it does have a direction, and the direction is the flow of the energy, and you got to see where that energy is flowing. But it's got to be from a remote position. Remember, I used to put cameras
in the air gun.
on the left and right of stage up in the balconies, and all they would do is focus on the first 20 feet in front of the barricade. Never on the band, because who cares what the band, band has zero
The band
to do.
used to make us make sure that the microphone wasn't
Yeah,
out because we
I'd
so
have
we
to
didn't
put a
record it.
microphone
Literally.
defeat in there.
Yeah.
They
were pissed.
They would come and look at the handy cams to see if they had the little plug in for, if you put a mini plug in where the remote mic is, it defeats the mic that's in the camera. But if it's not attached to a remote mic, you get nothing. Okay, you just get no sound at all. So I had to put that plug in every time I recorded them, which is funny because the vibration still went through. Okay, if you turn the volume up on whatever you're playing them back, real loud, you'll hear
If
it.
anybody died at our shows, it was because of natural causes. It wasn't.
We only had in 32 years, only one person that I know of died, and that's the guy who fell off of the wall over. He never got in the Bruce Springsteen show. He was sitting on the entrance ramp to the underground parking outside the building at Soldier
outside.
Field, and he got dizzy from whatever was either
Fell
drunk.
down.
He fell backwards, cracked his head open.
Didn't one guy try to climb the wall at a Dead show at Soldier Field and fell and died? I thought that was one. I know
a guy who fell out of a tree at Soldier Field. Yeah.
I
See
do
the
remember.
trees
I remember. Listen,
next to the walls at Soldier
had
Field. They're
overdoses.
climbing the tree to get into the.
I remember at Northwestern games, some man had a heart attack. They couldn't bring. I mean, we've had people die at shows.
Yeah, but not as a result of
not as a
crowd-
result,
crowd.
not as a result of
crowd action.
our lack of planning.
The last time I worked was at the World Music Theater with the Grateful Dead, and it was like that movie Zulu, when you were like Lieutenant Bromhead. You would come and grab reinforcements and rush them into the breach. Danny shows up.
We could do a whole show on Dead shows.
Shows up on
Maybe
his,
we'll have to do a whole show on
your
Dead shows.
on your wagon, your golf cart, grabbing reinforcements, and a bunch of us jump on and.
What are we talking about next week, Tommy? It's your call.
Yeah, it's your turn next week.
You got to decide.
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, we'll figure it out.
We can talk about
Anything? Nobody listening today? Nobody commenting?
No comments.
Nobody wanted to know nothing.
Deadbeats out there. Okay.
It's too hot. It's 4th of July.
I don't know nothing.
Happy birthday, America.
Hey,
Yeah.
if anybody out there knows
4th
an
of July.
evangelical minister or whatever, we want to have a session or an episode on religion. Okay, but we need representatives from that part of the religious field.
I remember
we've got
once-
a Greek, we got Catholics. We need an evangelical Protestant, and then I'm going to bring in Jordan, the scientist. Okay, and we're going to go creation.
Is Jordan an atheist? Is he an agnostic? What is he?
I think he's a fallen away Catholic. I'm
Okay.
pretty sure because he's from the Baltic countries, so
There's a lot of Lutherans up
Usually
there.
Orthodox.
yeah, it could be.
The
Lutheran.
Lithuanians are Catholics, but the Estonians and the Latvians, they have a lot of Lutherans.
He might be Lithuanian, but I'm not sure.
Well, he's probably
Are we
Catholic.
going
Well,
to
it's
get a debate
It's
about
Macaris.
religion? Why would we
No,
do
it's
that?
not.
If it ends with an IS, it's Lithuanian.
That's what I thought.
Are we going to get a debate about religion?
We're gonna.
Why?
What I want to find out what the similarities are. Okay, I mean, I want to point out. I've been
Of
looking.
what?
Since I've been forced into watching YouTube quantum mechanics, okay, by my grandson, I've run across some striking similarities. Like they're saying now that before the Big Bang there was nothing. What does Genesis say? In the beginning there was nothing, and then the next thing they said in quantum mechanics that from nothing, the energy from nothing developed the Big Bang, okay? And Genesis said, and then God said, let there be light. And quantum mechanics says the first thing that happened after the Big Bang was photons. Okay, flooded the universe was photons. Well, photons is light. So I'm saying that here's
The
the other
Bible
thing.
says, "I am the beginning and the end."
Well, here's another funny thing. If you were God, okay, if you were God, just think about it. Well, we're all in His image and likeness, right?
Yeah, but I'm not God.
Well,
We were
you got to
in
be
His likeness,
able to
but go ahead.
conceive of
Go
what
ahead.
He would be like.
Go
right?
ahead.
I'd be satisfied to be the Pope.
There you go. Okay, first Irish Pope, right? Anyway, there should be an Irish Pope. There's never been, maybe the Poles, but there's never been a country that's been so devastated because they've been because they're
they're
Catholic.
Catholic.
Okay, as the Irish, and they've been stuck to it.
My brother
Anyway,
says
I
that
was
we
God-
should have. If we'd have turned Protestant, we'd
If
be
I
like
was
the
God,
Welsh.
I would need to follow. I would need to answer the question: is why does He work in mysterious ways? Why was my 2-year-old kid struck with leukemia? Why did my wife die of cancer while she was?
See,
leave me to have
there's
3 kids to raise.
there are
under
some
12
people
years
that
old.
believe that God is this guy that's working at this board, and He just controls everything that happens at every moment of everybody's life.
But He's
every day.
omniscient
Okay,
and
omnipotent.
omnipotent.
Okay.
I mean, that's
I
so
don't
if
think
He's
he-
omniscient. He does what?
I don't think He is omniscient. And
Well,
if
he
He's
says he
control-
is.
and
Where
if
did you
he
do that?
and if He
It's
controls
Iron
things,
Gospel.
we have
Where?
if we have free
Bible.
will.
Where?
The Bible doesn't say He's omniscient. God is omniscient. Are you telling me that?
I don't know. I've never heard that before.
You've
He's-
never heard
he's
that
a
He knows
fortune
everything.
teller.
No,
Because if He is, then we don't have free will.
that's right.
Well, that's always been the problem. That's always been the problem.
Well, the problem is
If
you
God
just
is
realize
eternal,
God's not
He
omniscient.
already knows what. Isn't that what the Seventh-day Adventists
So
say?
I can only
He
tell
already
you there
knows.
was,
They don't
and
eat
we can
pork.
get into it later, but I listened to a series by a guy named Bishop Callistos Ware. He was a Briton that turned Orthodox. He was a scholar, a very brilliant man, and he had a whole series about why good people suffer.
Okay.
And it's a real fascinating discussion that he has. But basically, he said that it is, if you believe in God and you believe in the devil, it's the devil always wants to go for the big hitters. If he can turn somebody that has faith, okay, like Job, all right, or somebody that's a sound Christian, he wins a big win, okay? But it's the people that can endure the hardships of life and still have faith that ultimately will be rewarded. Whether you believe it or not, whether you accept it or not,
It's a whole lot of work for the devil. What I would say, if I was God, how would I deal with the fact that I can't make everybody happy? Okay, that I
How
can't
do you-
cure every. Well, let me finish. I can't cure every illness. I can't answer all of those phone calls and prayers that say, "God, please, I beg of you. I've been your
How do you
fervent
have-
servant.
how do
for
you
all
have joy
these-"
with no sorrow?
So this is how I deal with it. I invent quantum mechanics and the quantum wave theory, the universal wave, which says that by scientists, mathematicians, they say that everything is possible when given enough time. Okay? And that all actions are attributable to whatever you do. Every action you do is someplace along that waveline. So it could be good, bad, good, bad, good, bad, all the way around. So when you have a universal wave, it says X number of people are going to have to die before they're 3. X number of people are going to die from cancer. X number of people are going. It's random. The whole universe is random. Okay, it all runs under a sine wave, and there's a probability as to whether or not you're going to have some.
So
certain
all of
thing
life
happen
and
to you.
all creation is
It's
just a
all random.
mathematical equation.
It's all mathematically plottable. Okay, every bit of it. Okay, is
Okay.
in fact.
If that's what you feel you want to believe in and live your life according to that, great.
Well, that's part of it
great,
too.
great.
You know, I mean,
Okay.
quantum mechanics.
I'm not interested in disproving anybody else's theory about why they're in his existence.
I didn't say you would be.
No, but it sounds like you want this discussion to be something along those
Well,
lines.
I want to see if there's holes in there.
Of course there's holes. There's probably holes in each one of them. There's holes in one theory, there's holes in another theory, there's holes in religion, there's holes in a lot of things.
Anyway, that's where we're going, and next week it's going to be who? It's going to be yours.
Tom,
right?
but we don't know.
Wotan.
Wotan. Wotan was the Greek name,
The German god.
German.
Yeah, I don't know Greek name Wotan. It's Wotanopolis,
I
but
thought,
not
it was,
Wotan.
I thought Woden. Odin was.
Odin is
was the-
Wotan.
Odin is Wotan.
Yeah, that's what the
Depending-
Scandinavians.
Scandinavian
It's
versus
called
German.
Wotan. Yeah.
Okay.
I still don't know what we're doing next week, but that's okay. Just tell me.
Yeah, we'll be here. We'll just do whatever we feel
We'll
like
be-
doing.
All right. Good night,
Mrs. Calabash, wherever you are. Even Tom's starting to mumble that a little
Yeah.
bit. He's,
Been around the low and the mighty, heard the sound